Welcome to the Well Woman Show. Each episode is a transformational journey using mindfulness, feminism, leadership, and strategy to support you to thrive personally, generate wealth, and impact your community.
Our mothers and grandmothers in their 40s and 50s, they often were not working stressful full-time jobs while raising young children and going through perimenopause, like all simultaneously. That is a new level of scheduling.
And now, here's your host, feminist thought leader, London School of Economics grad, leadership consultant, and transformational coach, Giovanna Rossi.
On the Well Woman Show this week, I talked to Ada Calhoun, whose new book, Why We Can't Sleep, Women's New Midlife Crisis, really digs into the Generation X women and our particular set of challenges. She's also the author of the memoir, Wedding Toasts I'll Never Give, named one of the top 10 memoirs of 2017 by W Magazine. And she writes for the New York Times and the New Republic. And I just want to say that it's very timely that this is our 200th episode. That's amazing. So a little bit of celebrating going on over here. Episode 200, and it's also my birthday week. Hello. I'm a Gen X woman myself. You know, Gen Xers are defined as being born between 1965 and 1980. And they're likely to be raising small children in their 40s or dealing with infertility issues. Does that describe you? I know it describes a lot of people that I know, and I certainly am raising small children in my 40s. We're also caring for aging relatives, and we're really trying to create a better life and better opportunities for our kids than we had. So lots of good info to dig into with Ada Calhoun on the show today. And what we talk about is how Generation X women were told we could do anything, but didn't actually have the resources. Why the current generation of women facing midlife have such strong anxiety, and why society perpetuates the idea that all women need to do to get ahead is to try harder. If this is all sounding familiar to you, or you have women in your life for whom this is a reality, head over to wellwomanlife.com/quiz to answer 2 questions that will help you identify your challenges and find some solutions. All the information shared today can be found at the show notes at wellwomanlife.com/200show. You can head over to wellwomanlife.com/Facebook to continue the conversation with us in our community group. The Well Woman Show is thankful for support from Natural Awakenings magazine in New Mexico and High Desert Yoga in Albuquerque. I'm speaking with Ada Calhoun. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Ada, I want to start by having you tell listeners, who are you in the world today?
I wrote a book called Why We Can't Sleep, Women's New Midlife Crisis, about middle-aged women, Gen X women, having kind of a hard time right now.
Yes, and we'll totally get into the book, but I kind of wanted to step back from that for just a minute and hear a little bit more about you as a person. But I would love for you to just talk a little bit about who you are in the world besides the author of this amazing book that we will get into.
I have, I'm married, so I have my husband. We've been together 20 years, and I'm the mother of a 13-year-old and stepmother of a 26-year-old and the daughter of 2 aging parents, one of whom has lung cancer. And I also try to do a lot of community stuff. So I do some teaching, and I run a women's nonfiction journalism series with 2 author friends of mine. And yeah, I have a lot of nice friends who I'm missing quite a bit at the moment. Kind of walled off inside my house.
Yes, right. Like many of us. Ada, what are you working on? You said you have just written this book. How are you using this to sort of impact women's lives? Like, what do you hope is the result of writing this book?
So it came out of a story I wrote for Oprah.com called The New Midlife Crisis. And what I did was try to figure out how women of this age were coping with what seems to be a sort of a different experience of middle age than our mothers and grandmothers had. I've been getting these messages since the story came out, so for a couple of years, from women who read one or the other, saying that they felt seen or stood, or that they felt like there was a name attached to what they were experiencing. and that it felt kind of good to know that they weren't alone.
Yes. And isn't that sort of the goal of any writing, right? Is to sort of connect with people and tell your story, but in the meantime, tell other people's story as well.
Yeah, there's no greater gift than to hear that from readers. And I feel like, I'm really lucky. I mean, that's why I read also, is to feel less alone myself. And I feel like writing the book helped me so much. Just hearing other women's stories and feeling connected to them made my experience of middle age so much easier.
So the Well Woman community is a community of women of all ages, but particularly a lot of high achieving, driven women who are quote unquote doing it all or trying to do it all. And a lot of the community really is in their 40s and 50s and 30s. And so we talk about a lot of the issues that you wrote about. And one of the things that came up for me while reading the book was this idea that there's just so much fear and anxiety about everything, right? Almost all the points you make in the book are, the root cause is like this deep fear and anxiety.
Yeah, it's something I heard over and over again from women I was interviewing, and something that I am not unfamiliar with in my own brain. And I think a lot of it, I argue, comes from how we grew up and the trajectory we've had as a generation. So like most of the women who are middle-aged now are Gen X. 40% of us are children of divorce. And the crime rate was extremely high when we were kids. We grew up with this fear of nuclear annihilation. Like so many women I talked to had just this series of traumas as young people. And then we've kind of hit one crisis after another. The recessions hit us at the exact wrong moments in our careers. And just when we bought a house, the housing market collapsed. And so I think the anxiety is deep and it's very powerful. And I think it even, and maybe especially if you're trying to do a ton of stuff, it can really affect you and kind of eat away at you from the inside.
Yes. And I think that there are a lot of services and people out there trying to help these women, right? Help us. But I feel like a lot of the solutions are very individual based. You can control the, outcome of your life. And while I believe some of that is true, there are definitely things we can do. I also think there are these systems issues, like really entrenched systemic problems that have contributed to the fear and anxiety of women in this age group. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, first of all, there's just the amount that we're trying to do. And I think it just doesn't get said enough. Our mothers and grandmothers in their 40s and 50s, they often were not working stressful full-time jobs while raising young children and going through perimenopause, all simultaneously. That is a new level of scheduling that is pretty intense, and especially given that a lot of women of this generation are breadwinners at the same time. So we don't have tons more support, but we do have tons more responsibility. And I think that also the job world has changed in a way that there's not a lot of stability. You don't have the same job for 30, 40 years the way maybe our fathers and grandfathers did. You have to move around and constantly reinvent yourself over and over again. It's very hard to find something with benefits that's really gonna be sustained for a long period of time. So I think there's a legitimate fear there, and I think the anxiety, unfortunately, it comes from a real place. And given the ageism and sexism in the workplace, I know so many women in their 50s, especially, who have had a lot of trouble getting back into the workforce if they took time off to care for other people, or if got laid off. I mean, it's scary out there.
Okay, so you mentioned ageism and sexism, and I just want to pick up on that because I think a lot of the isms, racism included, contribute to this. Can you talk about how that might be happening and what some of the solutions are for addressing that?
Well, again, it's like it winds up often falling on women's shoulders to take care of it. And that is one thing, like you mentioned, the solutions that we are given, they so often are things like Lean In, or self-help programs that focus on the things that we're supposed to be doing in order to combat the isms and to get ahead. And like I think that it's not maybe up to us a lot of what's going to happen. I think that employers, the whole system of the workplace, these are huge changes that need to happen for life to get easier for women in this demographic. So it's and there are all these studies too, right, that say that things like lean in perpetuate this idea that it's under our control, and that if you haven't gotten ahead, have you tried leaning in? What's wrong with you if you're still struggling? And I think that doesn't acknowledge just how damaged the system is.
There's a real role for systems and groups and organizations outside of the individual woman here in terms of the solution. And certainly workplaces is one. And I do think that the global health crisis that is happening in 2020 we are going to see some major changes. And we're already seeing some with so many hundreds and thousands of people flocking from the offices to their homes and trying to recreate the workday from their kitchen table or living room. And so we're seeing some shifts. How do you think, what is the responsibility of employers and business owners right now?
Well, we're in such an early stage of all this. It's so hard to know what's going to happen even tomorrow. I don't know. I wish I did. I do see tons of people being laid off, a lot of my friends. And it's just an incredibly scary time with not a really clear end game. I don't know. I've been freelance for a long time, and that too, I think, is kind of up in the air. Like, do people still need freelance articles? Do people, what kind of books do people need? Like, there is this just sense of real uncertainty.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of unknowns, and I think that that we all, need to have a lot of flexibility right now and adaptability, and just try to let go of the way we always have known things to be. And so I guess where I'm going with this is a lot of things that I've been working on in my career and the things that you're writing about and others, I think we're going to see some of those shifts as a result of this global health crisis. We can see that as an opportunity, perhaps.
Yeah. It might be that this idea of flex time and benefits and all these things become normalized, or we see the benefit of them in all this. Yeah, again, who knows? It's such a strange time. It's really funny. One thing that came up in the book is this idea of ambiguous loss, like that a lot of women who wanted families, who were single, who hoped to meet someone, that there was something about not knowing whether they would ever find someone, like they could find somebody tomorrow or never. That this one expert told me was like the most upsetting state to be in. Like, you can mourn if you know something's over, and I think we're all in this ambiguous loss state right now because we don't know anything, and it's worse in a way than having a crisis happen and then you move on.
Yeah. And did you find in general that the women you talked to really needed to be able to control the outcomes? Because I think that's definitely a character trait of a lot of high achieving women. I'm not sure if it's a trait for the GenX women's generation in general, but I know a lot of us are really attached to outcomes and controlling outcomes. And right now, especially in what we're going through in the world, we really do need to detach a little bit and not be so attached to how things are going to turn out and to controlling things.
That is something that I heard again and again. I think it is a very Gen X thing, especially for women. Having had these chaotic childhoods, a lot of us sought refuge in being able to control things like our grades. This is a very type A group of women as a rule. And, a lot of us worked from the time we were very young. I know I had my first job at 13, and tried really hard to get straight A's and work and make our own money. And I think if you do that and you are trying to do so many things all at once, when you have something like this happen and you don't have any control, I think it can really feed that anxiety quite a bit. my social media feeds, I can tell you, all the ones that are kind of heavy on this demographic, they are filled with schedules. Like they are people taking pictures of their color-coded schedules for their household under lockdown, and it's a wonder. It's a wonder of PowerPoint and and dry erase marker.
Yeah, I know. I just recorded a podcast a couple of days ago, and it's all about, kind of letting those things go, lowering the bar a little bit on all of these expectations we have of ourselves. So I want to pick up on something you just mentioned, which is this idea that we had these chaotic childhoods and sort of buried ourselves in doing really well in school, and that definitely. I definitely relate to that that was my own experience, and trying to, just like that was my safe place. That was a great, comfortable place. I could really excel in school and in career. And so I think that has created a generation of workaholics.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I know that's partly what you address here. So what can we tell women who have found themselves in this it's like, I don't want to tell women to not be driven. Like, of course we want to accomplish things, but at some point there needs to be some adjustment and some balance.
So one thing that many of the hundreds of women that I talked to for the book told me was that growing up, they were told they could do anything. They could, you can be anything you want, even president. There was this constant drumbeat of like, look at all the opportunities you have. And that somewhere along the line that translated into like, I could do anything. So that means I have to do everything. And I think that and also I have to judge myself on everything. So a lot of women told me that they felt like they had to be perfect as mothers, as partners, as bosses or employees, and like on all these other fronts too. Like their house had to look great. They had to be in shape. They had to be able to cook. Like, I mean, it was just this long list of obligations to perfection. And I think that it is time to say like, no one can. I mean, that the whole having it all thing, it's like, what is it all? Like, what is the it? And like, you have to pick a couple of things. Like you're not going to get like 100% on every single one of those areas. Like you're going to have to pick one or two, and what are they going to be? And you can be very ambitious within those, whether it's work or home or anything, but thinking you're going to ace everything, it's not without some deep cost to your sleep for sure, or your spiritual energy.
Yeah. And actually on the Well Woman show, we talk about a lot of all these issues quite a bit. And one of the things that I hear from the community is this idea that we're overworked, we're really ambitious, and we're trying to do everything. And what it ends up doing is first of all, we do have sleep problems, like you point out. We also have major health problems. Like we crash, it's like we go into burnout, and then we have a major crisis, either some sort of health issue or some breakdown, basically. And so what I'm trying to do in the Well Woman Life community is really support women with solutions for like, how do we prevent that crisis before it happens? Like, how can we, what things can we put in place, both on an individual level and on the systems level, right? Like working on workplace changes and policy changes, so that we don't have to have that breakdown or that health crisis in order to wake up and be like, oh, I need to change a few things.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's exactly right. And I also think like one thing that prevents that from happening is what I heard over and over again in these interviews, which is women telling me, I'm so lucky. I have no right to complain. They would almost all open a conversation with that before they told me these really horrible stories about how hard their lives were. And I think that it comes from the outside, where I think there is this pressure on women to be quiet. And then I think that comes from inside too, on the sense that we're supposed to be practicing gratitude all the time. And that what gratitude means is, just appreciating what you have and not asking for more and not complaining. And I do think we need to complain. I think we need to say, this is not fair. This is really difficult. And we need more support. And whether that comes from other people in the family or from people in the community or, in-laws babysitting or bosses, not firing you for taking a day off to take care of an aging parent or whatever it is, I think we need to ask for it.
Yeah, we definitely do. That is a good message to ask for what you need. And we do emphasize that here on the show. I'm talking to Ada Calhoun, author of Why We Can't Sleep, Women's New Midlife Crisis. And we'll be right back with the segment called Superpowers for Success. I'm so thankful for support from Natural Awakenings magazine in New Mexico, a monthly green, healthy lifestyle publication, and for support from High Desert Yoga, promoting optimum physical health, clarity of mind, and spiritual inspiration for all. Many of you have followed my journey from consulting to women's leadership and empowerment, starting a nonprofit, raising 2 kids, and everything in between. I've really taken some time this year to focus in on where I can help the most women with their own desire to create social impact and also a good income for themselves and their families. As my consulting and coaching practice is growing, I found that one of my favorite things to do is the free discovery sessions. I love hearing about people's passions for the work they do, sharing what I do, and helping people understand what my hybrid consulting coaching is all about. Hint, hint, serious strategy plus spacious mindset. So if you find yourself worrying about whether you'll ever make it in the thing you're pursuing, or waking up in the middle of the night anxious about money, lacking energy you need to get everything done, or procrastinating on moving forward with projects and tasks, or even if you're in a leadership role, but you're second guessing yourself and not getting things done, I'd love to talk to you. These conversations help me get clear on how I can help more leaders create the impact and income they want so they can start living with ease and joy. Plus, you'll get a free hour with me to get crystal clear on what you want to create for your company or organization and your life, and what's been holding you back. So if you're interested, you can book a call at wellwomanlife.com/learn more. I'm back with Ada Calhoun on the Well Woman Show, and we're going into this segment called Superpowers for Success. Ada, I want to ask you a few quick questions. The first one is, what does success in life mean for you?
Well, for me, I feel like I've only just gotten to it like very recently, and it means hearing from people that I help them in some way. That's kind of a new experience for me, and getting those messages has been really life affirming for me.
Okay. And when did you know you were really good at what you do? Like as a writer, I guess we could take that example, and you've been a writer for a long time. When did you know you were really good at what you do?
I think in like middle school, I was the editor of my school paper, and I wrote like these very impassioned op-eds. And I think it was back then I felt like when I was writing, things seemed to make a lot more sense than the rest of the time. Was
that because of the external like validation that you received, or was it an internal knowing? Like this is like my happy place.
I think I knew because it was the way that it was like in journals and in things for the paper. It was the way that I made sense of life and the way that I kind of wrote my way out of confusion.
Ada, can you describe a personal habit that contributes to your own well-being so that you can do everything that you do?
I make lists pretty compulsively. I will make a list on any piece of paper that it comes within like a foot of me.
Okay, but then can you keep track of all that, or does it get disorganized?
Oh no, I'm organized. I do a lot of very detailed list making. I remake my lists pretty much, every day, at least once or twice. There are different kinds of lists, different terms of time. I have them on my computer and in my notebooks and on my phone and everywhere. So yes. And there's a Go-Go song, I'm the girl of 1,000 lists, and I relate to that very intensely.
Okay, I love that. So wait, I just need to ask you, when you're making all these lists on paper, on your computer, on your phone, how do you then integrate them all so that they all are cohesive?
I'm so glad you asked. I take all the lists periodically, and then I merge them into a giant list, and then that list evolves, and then there's other ones, and it's a constant struggle.
And then is this like for a book, perhaps like for a project, like different lists for different?
Yeah, there's like the list of like assignments. I mean, I have lists for everything. It's like I've got a list of movies that now we are going to watch in quarantine. There's about 30 movies on the list, and then I have like a list of chores to get done while we're and then I have like a list of all the research I need to do for my next project and all that. I have the list for all the things.
Yeah, so like topic-based lists. I like that. Okay. Do you do anything else for your well-being besides that kind of thing? Like, are you a meditator, yoga, exercise? Like, what do you do that helps you physically, like, and emotionally stay well?
Well, I used to go to Pilates class and I really like that a lot. But what I found is that often self-care makes me feel lonely. Like there's something about it, like getting a manicure, getting my hair done, or whatever, that feels like I'm all by myself. And I've learned that I actually need company. So I started a women's journalists like bar night once a month. And that has been the most nourishing thing. I've been doing that for 2 years.
Yeah. Community always tends to come up when I interview people because of that, needing that connection. And I will say, just on the note of self-care, so we hear that so much nowadays. I actually don't really believe in self-care in the way that it's traditionally taught, like, oh, go, schedule a manicure, go get a massage. Like, that's all fine. But what I'm asking women to do is to ask for what they need on a daily basis.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely I started to think whenever people were like, oh, you just need to take an hour, and go by yourself. I'm like, an hour is not going to do anything. Like, and also I sort of felt like people were telling me that I should look less tired. Like everything seemed to be involved, like serums or whatever. And I was like, I just am really tired. I'm going to look tired because that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, exactly. And this whole business of like, let me take those lines away from your face. I'm like, no, I want my lines. Like I earned these lines. Like, and also, speaking of systems and isms, I think by pressuring women to look a certain way and to not look like they're aging has a really detrimental impact on us.
Yeah, I think so too. And also, I got annoyed at somebody in this co-working space and I just kind of like frowned at him and then he like scurried. He was like he's talking on his phone loudly, like right in the quiet zone. Anyway, so he like ran away and I was thinking about it. I was like, if I had like Botox or anything like that, I wonder if I would have been able to convey my deep annoyance successfully, or if he would have looked over and I was just perfectly happy.
Right. That's awesome. Okay. What superpower did you discover you had, Ada, only to realize it was there all the time?
I got good at structuring books, I think, in the last few years. I've been ghostwriting for like the last 10 years. I've done 14 books for other people. And in doing that, I think I figured out it's kind of like a crossword puzzle. I used to be good at crossword puzzles and I think the book structure has a similar skill.
Yeah, it's a puzzle. It's definitely a puzzle. I'm working on a book right now and it's a puzzle for sure. Okay. What advice would you give your younger self, say 25 years old?
I guess I would say to worry less. I don't know that I would have taken that advice, but I wish I'd worried less.
Do you identify as a feminist?
Yeah.
And what does that mean for you?
I think it's just about equality and, I think it's a broad statement of thinking that women have not been treated as equal for a long time. And should be. I think it's as simple as that.
Okay. And last question, what are you reading right now? What's on your nightstand?
Oh gosh, I have 5 million books on my nightstand. There's a Simone Weil book and I've got Janet Malcolm's The Silent Woman, the Fleabag script, Robert McKee's story. I don't know. I got a lot of stuff.
Okay. Let's just recommend one then for people. Janet Malcolm. What was that one?
The Silent Woman. I haven't started it yet. I just read a couple pages, so I don't know if I can recommend it yet.
Doesn't need to be a recommendation. We'll just put it on the list as something interesting that our guest is reading.
Oh, and I'm reading the Busy Phillips memoir, which I'm enjoying very much. That's a very Gen X book.
Okay, that's a good one. We'll put that on there too. Well, Ada Calhoun, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
That's it for our show today. Remember, if you need support to live your Well Woman life, head over to wellwomanlife.com/Facebook to join our community. As a reminder, we are on NPR every week, so be sure to tune in at npr.org/podcasts and search for The Well Woman Show. If you enjoyed today's show, please take a moment and subscribe and leave a review. This helps raise visibility, which is super helpful when it comes to producing the show every week. For feedback, comments, or just to let me know you were listening, find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Well Woman Life. I'm Giovanna Rossi for The Well Woman Show. Until next time, have a super powerful week.